give him the clarity and strength to do what he was about to do. Life was uncertain. This could be the last time he was on a board, the last week he was free, or the last week Tyler was alive. Johnny had to unpack the baggage for a minute and prepare, so he did. Pulling up to the beach, the waves were perfect. The waves were always perfect here. Locals ruled here, and he was one of them. Walking up to the beach, he was flooded with emotion. He remembered learning to surf here, almost dying. Midnight surfing with Bodie and the gang. Everything was so pure back then. Johnny had no idea they were bank robbing criminals, getting ready to turn his life upside down, just as fast as he's planning to turn theirs. Wow, life was a trip sometimes. Johnny Utah paddled out and resisted the urge to take the first wave. Utah sat there, looking around. He said a prayer, soaked in the scenery, had a moment of calm, then gave in to the energy, caught the next set, and rode like a man possessed. Surfing truly was the source. For that one moment he was happy, safe, and everything was okay. After an hour of riding, he packed his things up, but had a weird thought, like someone was watching him. He shook his head, clearing that thought. He was sure someone was watching him. He refocused. He would find Tyler, and he would get Bodie out of jail. That's what he would do. He would get her back, then he would kill Bodie. This time, he wasn't coming back. Tommy watched him surf for a couple reasons. A, he was good. B, he said he would. And with Bodie gone, he wanted to see who the new king of the beach was. It was weird. Johnny was riding like his hair was on fire, taking chances and chucking ridiculous moves like he was mad at the ocean. Tommy wondered if he was stressed about the oncoming trial, conflicted because Bodie was his friend and his enemy. Either way, it was an impressive performance. Johnny was surfing like it was his last time. Tommy was impressed. He would give the breakdown to Bodie next time he visited his client in prison. You can't imagine how conflicting it is for a career lawman to turn himself into a criminal or a civilian. The badge becomes your identity, your life, and your job. It changes you until you are the job. Johnny couldn't help but think of Angelo Pappas as he sat in his home. Was this the right way? He needed his old friend's guidance so bad. Johnny centered his thoughts to Tyler to give him strength to do what he needed to do. Johnny opened up the pill container, took 3 Percocets, and poured himself a big tumbler of whiskey. Put on some good old school punk rock. The song was Peaceful Day by Pennywise, and it brought him back to his football days. The crowd going wild, the fear and the unknown, and the feeling that you get, and that's how he felt now. Johnny was consumed by rage, hate. It was game time. He was ready. These were going to be Johnny's last sober moments for a while. With that, he took the pills and started crushing the whiskey. Johnny had to admit, the pills felt good. It took him away to a different place. A place where all of this wasn't happening. Pain-free, stress-free, almost a different time. This wasn't the reason he took the pills. Now that he was drunk as a skunk and high as a kite, he grabbed his car keys and stumbled to his vehicles for the tricky part. Johnny had to get into an accident and get arrested, but not kill anyone. In his current state of mind, it was rolling the dice either way. Johnny wasn't too sure who to hit or where to drive, so he drove. As he drove, he was closer to his old captain's house. To say things ended badly between the two was an understatement. Mutual dislike turned into hatred, which turned into a fight at Papkis's funeral, ending any chance that things could be worked out. The captain was suspended for a week after management sided with Utah. Johnny figured, why not crash at his house? Things probably could have been handled different, but they weren't, so here they were. Johnny had no respect for the captain and decided to park his car in his garage, with the door still closed. The crash stunned Johnny. He was halfway through the garage and parked in the back of the captain's truck. Alarms honked loudly in the middle of the night. He wondered if he'd done the right thing, but there was no choice. This was his play. This was his life now. Probably lucky for Johnny the captain wasn't home. He staggered around in the backyard, peed on the house. He wanted to be arrested and breath tested, to have blood work done, establish phase one of his plan. Johnny Johnny's plan was to discredit his own testimony. Your evidence won't be admitted to court if you have drugs in your system. As the approaching sirens sang quietly in the night and approached, it felt weird because they were coming for him. Two cop cars slammed to a halt, and the cops jumped out, guns drawn. Get on the ground, now! Johnny was roughly thrown to the ground, cuffed. As the cops read him his rights, he chose to waive those rights as he cursed out the cops. They ran his credentials and discovered his identity, but they didn't give him any professional courtesy. Johnny had driven through the captain's garage door and mocked everyone trying to help him. They took some blood as he was uncooperative and chucked him into a stinky cell with bums and drug addicts. Johnny spent the night in jail, was processed, and released in the morning. This would cause him problems down the road, but these weren't today's problems. Tommy Boxtel was awoken at 5 a.m. A call from his deputy friend from the precinct asking him if he heard the news. Sure, replied Tommy. I'm always awake and watching the news at 5 a.m., he replied sarcastically. Well, turn it on, funny guy, he'd replied, and hung up. Searching for the remote, Tommy cursed as he stubbed his toe. This better be important, he muttered. There was tons of cameras outside the local jail cell, and the caption read, Superstar FBI Agent Special Agent Johnny Utah, booked for drunk driving and driving under the influence of narcotics. The reporter rehashed some of the details about Percocets, whiskey, the captain's house, and that Johnny had been using pain medication since his injury in college. It had been 2 years of rehab surgery, and that may have left him with a pill addiction. Reporters and the public were questioning Johnny's cases. There was a new wave for him to be under, a wave of dirt and doubt. The FBI had no comment, and everyone expected he would be snuck out of jail. Tommy clicked off the TV and sat stunned in silence for a while. Bodie had gotten his break. There was still a long shot, but the prosecution had been dealt a major blow. One detective dead, and the other was a pill junkie. As he drove to prison, he started to formulate a plan to compromise the video evidence from the bank. Bodie was lying in his bunk. He was still new to prison and surprised that people could sleep through any night here. There was beatings by inmates and guards, people talking, threatening, rapping. None of the guards cared. Half the time the guards were in on the beating, even gambling on prison fights. As time went by, the sun came up, but he couldn't see much, only in his memories. At some point a fat guard showed up. Get up, your lawyer's here. I saw him yesterday, Bodie said. Hands to the bars and face the wall and shut your mouth. Bodie thought, this was weird. Tommy was there yesterday, and it was early. Oh well, whatever it takes for a change of scenery. Maybe he would even have some real food and coffee. Tommy sat there with his feet on the table in a suit, looking smug. The room had an aroma of baraka and fresh coffee. It was the closest thing to freedom Bodie had smelt in months. The deputy left. Bodie smirked at Tommy. You look stupid. You just come from the circus? Tommy laughed. Bodie, I need you to make me a new license plate. It felt good seeing Bodie smile for a second, like they were on the beach surfing, not in a small interrogation room. So, Tommy said, I got some news about your case. Well, Bodie asked. Remember Johnny Utah? He replied, how could I forget him? What, is he the president now? He may be dirtier than our current president. He is currently getting released from the drunk tank. They busted him, drunk and high. He's in a bit of trouble, and so are his cases. Tommy watched Bodie's reaction as he dropped the bombshell on him. He was surprised to see a genuine look of shock and sadness cross his face before he quickly chuckled, tilted his head back, and burst out laughing. Bodie laughed for a long time, seemingly enjoying the moment. Then it started to dawn on him what it meant for him and for his case. Was there a possibility of freedom? Could he look forward to it one day, leaving this nightmare behind? Hope was a scary option, but it was his only option. So, Bodie said, what does this mean for me? What is the next move? Tommy went through all the details with him, and at the end he understood that it was still probably all over, but God works in mysterious ways. The big problem, Tommy said, is they still have you on video at the bank, mask off, shooting an off-duty cop. How do we explain that? Bodie's heart sank. He'd shot him in the vest, knocking him over, but his mask stayed on. When he got up and saw his dead friend, the man that shot him, rage had taken over. He took off his mask and shot him in cold blood. Bodie thought he'd either get away with his crimes he'd committed or he'd get shot and go out like a gangster. What could he do to change the narrative? He would still look guilty. They kicked around some ideas, but nothing stuck. After 5 hours, Tommy promised to be back tomorrow, and they would find a way. Bodie asked Tommy if he's going surfing tonight, and the topic went back to normal. They hung out for a couple hours, swapping stories and having a good laugh. As Bodie shuffled back to his cell, he did it with a smile on his face. The only advantage he had here is he had nothing but time to think. He finally had something to do in his cell. Today was the day that Bodie started to fight for his life and his freedom. Johnny Utah was back home. He sat in his chair and the burner phone rang. He answered on the first ring, eager but dreading the message. What if he'd screwed up and they killed her? What if they asked him to do something that he couldn't or won't do? Was there anything he wouldn't do? Hey brah, good work so far. You keep this up and we'll never meet. It's a green Jeep Compass with tinted windows, parked a block away. Keys are under the visor. You can move around. Don't get caught. Because needless to say, your license is suspended for your high profile right now. And you're high driving. I want to talk to Tyler, Johnny screamed. Too bad. You get to talk to me. I'm in charge.